Hey everybody, welcome back to the results reveal video for a video I did a couple days ago comparing the real-life Revv Generator 100R amplifier, it's the Mark III version, to the Helix Revv Gen Red model. I thought this would be really fun and it's something I had some requests for ever since I did the video when I received my Revv Generator amp. Now these are different amp models like I mentioned in the first video, but today I'm going to give you some results. But first I want to do another blind test. I thought, you know what? This is so much fun and a lot of people really seem to enjoy it. So I want to try something else. I had some requests to do these same tones that I used in the previous video within a mix. Nothing too complicated mix-wise, but with some drums and bass and maybe two guitars panned out left and right. So I did that, but I'm also throwing something else into the ring. And before I give you the results of the previous video, I want to give you this new test and I'll play you the tracks and you leave me which one you think is which. But here's the wrench I threw in. As a quick rundown of what I did when I did the previous video, I used the Helix Revv Gen Red model, but I used the 2 Notes Wall of Sound plugin, and I basically recreated the same, we'll call it IR, as I was using with the built-in torpedo remote in the Revv Generator amp. So I used the exact same settings and I was really wondering if that was even going to work because one is like the Wall of Sound plugin, one is a torpedo remote, but I didn't really have any other way to do it that I know of with that software. And I wanted to compare them using the same, stock cab or IR because otherwise the differences are going to be too much. So I did that, and in both of those plugins, I used the Revv 112 cabinet with a Warehouse Speakers EP90 speaker in it. I happen to have that cab sitting right over there behind me. So I also reamped the exact same tracks through the real Revv Gen 100R, miking it into the actual Revv 112. So no digital there at all, other than obviously the final recording medium we used into the DAW and onto a hard drive. But this is going to be interesting, and I think this is going to be an easy one to tell which one is which as far as which one is the real deal guitar amp and guitar speaker. But I thought I would throw it in. So I'm going to play you 3 tracks now. One is the same Helix tone that we heard in the last video. One is the same Revv tone going through the torpedo remote, so digital guitar speaker emulation. And one is the Revv Generator amp going through the real speaker mic'd. And I'll tell you more about how I did all of that in the results reveal for that one. But for now, here's the 3 tones. So your job is going to be to tell me again, mix A, mix B, mix C. Can anybody tell me which one's the Helix, which one's the Revv through the torpedo remote, and which one is the Revv through the real speaker? And also, as usual, which one you prefer. So here they are. All right, what do you guys think? I mean, the 2 that we used last time are going to be a little bit tougher to pick out, but I think personally, because I didn't have, the same room and the exact same microphones either that were used in the IR, I think it's a little obvious, but I wanted to throw in that example just simply to show how great a place we're in, whether we're using a real guitar amp through IRs or stock cabs, or whether we're using the Helix, just how great these sound in comparison to the real thing. And, with some EQ, I'm sure all of those could have been made to sound exactly the same. I just placed the mics around, dialed things in as much as I could. I didn't add any EQ. I just balanced the 2 microphones I used to get the tone differences. Anyways, on to the results of the previous video. So in the previous video, as I mentioned, we had the real Helix Revv Generator amp going through the torpedo remote software. We had the Helix going through the same or extremely similar IR just because I had to do it in the Wall of Sound plugin, which I'll show you in a minute. And I dialed it in really quick. I don't think they were exact as I mentioned in the previous one, but I think they were kind of close. And honestly, in my opinion, close enough for any particular situation that you need that particular tone for. So here were the results. First of all, Helix was tone A and the real Revv amp was tone B. Moving on to how many people guessed that Helix was A. 28 people thought Helix was A and were correct, and 32 people thought Helix was B, which were incorrect. And as far as who preferred what, 18 preferred A and 10 preferred B. The vote count on the preference is much lower. I always find that funny. A lot of folks will vote and tell which one is which one they think is which, and they don't actually give a preference. Or they come out and say, you know what, I like them both, or things like they're too close to call, you know, along that. So that's why we get the lower vote count on that. So very interesting results again. Again, it kind of shows it's a really tough call to really tell which is a real amp and which is the modeling. And I think that's kind of why I do these videos. I mean, I've said it a million times. I really think we live in a time that's amazing to be a guitar player. We have such simple ways to capture such amazing tones now without going to the trouble of what I did, you know, just in this previous new blind test at the beginning of this video, which get microphones out, mic and amp, move them around, feed that in, get my levels set. You know, I used the same settings on the Revv Generator 100 for that anyways. I wasn't going to get into starting to tweak that. But you know, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. And then you kind of listen, you go, are we really gaining much now from miking an amp like that? You know, I don't know. I mean, everybody's going to have a different opinion on that. And I'm not saying that anybody should think definitely one way or another, but it is very interesting to see how great a result we can actually get totally in the box in the digital world now with modeling. So let's go over to Cubase. I'm going to show you kind of what I did here. So for the Helix, here are the settings that I used. I had the Helix Revv Gen Red model with no cab, stock cab, or IR, drive at 7.5, bass at 4.6, mid at 3, treble at 6.5, presence at 6.7, channel volume up to 10, doesn't affect the tone, master on 5, resonance on 4.5, aggression on 1, sag on 5, hum on 0, ripple on 5, bias on 5, and bias X on 5. Here are the settings I used on the real amp. You'll see that channel 3 is engaged, which is the red channel. The aggression was on blue, which is like the 1 setting on the Helix. I had gain up around 7.5, 8, I guess, you know, around 2:30, 3 o'clock on the dial. The level control was cranked just for me to get the level I needed. Treble was up around, you know, 1:30, 2 o'clock, in and around there, which might equate to 6.5, 7 on the Helix. Mids were right up the middle. Bass was slightly off of center. Presence was moved up to about the 3 o'clock position, again, maybe around 7.5 or 8. And depth, which I was thinking was going to be similar to the resonance control on the Helix. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seemed to be. Depth was up around 11 o'clock, or maybe like a setting of 4. And the master we see was up probably around maybe, I don't know, 3.5 or so. Now, I didn't copy those settings exactly on the Helix. I started there and then I just tweaked a little bit just to get them a little bit closer. But like I said, I never spend a lot of time on this because I don't want to get ear fatigue. I just go into it because it's really not that important in the end, and just tweak it to get it somewhat in the ballpark. Anyway, so a lot of people told me they thought it sounded very, very close. So now coming over to the IR side of things, I used, as I mentioned, the Torpedo Wall of Sound plugin from 2 Notes. And I used this Revv 112 ET90 speaker cab, which is the exact same speaker cab I have here in the room with me. I dual mic'd it, one with a 421, which is a Sennheiser 421 mic, and one with the Royer R121 ribbon mic. Little more, if you see on the volume here, volume on the ribbon. I always like to bounce the ribbons a little more. I know some folks like to do the opposite. I turned everything else off and I just moved them around. I pulled the ribbon mic back and slightly off axis, I believe, and the Dynamic 421 was more straight up close. You can see that little mic will move up on top right here when I click on the 121. So pulled back off axis a bit, and the 121 was straight on. What I did for the Revv Generator real amp is run it through the included built-in Torpedo remote software. And if you notice, I made all the settings the same. So I have the ribbon mic pulled back. Obviously it's a different room, but I don't have that room reverb on. So that wasn't anything that affected things at all. So I just duplicated the same settings there. Now back in Cubase, here's my guitar DI track, which is going to be this kind of generic awful sounding DI guitar, right? So we'll get rid of that. And then we have the Helix track here. And the Revv track here. Okay, so let me maybe just loop that a little bit, and I'll flip back and forth between the two sounds so you can hear them. First, the Revv. All right, there you hear them kind of back and forth. The same? No, not at all. I mean, there's a difference between them, obviously. Could you EQ them to sound the same? Probably very easily, yeah. Would it even matter in a mix? I don't know. I mean, you heard these same two things in a mix previous in this video, right? So you be the judge of that. I mean, yeah, you're probably still going to hear a difference, but is it going to matter, you know, when it comes down to it? So that's the results of that one. But I have that new test included with this. I hope you guys will take part in that as well. So for that test, please tell me which one you think is the Helix, which one you think is the Revv through the IR, and which one you think is the Revv through a real cabinet mic'd in the studio. I thought that would be fun. And I think everybody's going to get the real amp in the studio, mic'd in the studio. I just think it's so much different than these for so many reasons. But again, tell me which one you prefer, because I think that's what it really comes down to too, is if we hear that and we actually are preferring the IR'd versions, then, you know, and again, they're different microphones in a different scenario. So it's nothing really scientific about it, but I thought it would be fun. And a lot of folks have asked me to do similar things. So anyways, I'll do a results reveal to this results reveal for the new blind test. Okay, whatever, it's getting confusing. But anyways, I will do that hopefully maybe early next week. I'll let some of the results roll in, and we'll go from there and see how that turns out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like it, share it with anybody that you can to kind of get the word out about it, and anybody you think would enjoy it. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Hope you're enjoying these videos, and we'll talk real soon. Ciao for now.